I'd seen the invite a week before it happened, sandwiched between two back-to-back code review alerts and a calendar block for my mom's oncology consult. Declan's birthday. Mandatory. Mandatory. The kind of word that meant nothing and everything depending on who was using it. I didn't go. Not out of spite. Not even out of oversight. Just priority. That day Mom couldn't stop shaking after chemo. I spent 4 hours with her on the bathroom floor. When she finally slept, I opened my laptop and pushed a patch live that stabilized the algorithm across 2 cloud environments. By morning I'd answered 38 emails and resolved 5 backend flags. Monday felt normal. Or close enough. No strange looks. No passive comments. Nothing that said, "You missed something political." Then Wednesday came. The meeting invite was short. Quick chat. 11:15 a.m. No subject. Sent by HR CC'd to Declan. I sat across from him in the glass conference room where we used to brainstorm version updates. This time there was no whiteboard. No coffee. Just Declan in a tailored blazer, leaning back like he'd practiced this. HR sat to the side, laptop open but not typing. He smiled before he spoke. That polished, PR-smooth smile. "I want to make this brief, Ember," he said. "We've appreciated your contributions, but we're moving in a different direction." I stared at him for a second too long. Not because I didn't understand but because I did. "This isn't performance-based," HR added softly. "It's about alignment with culture and leadership." Culture. The word hit like a slap I was supposed to pretend didn't sting. I looked at Declan. "You're letting me go because I missed your party." He blinked, slow. "It's not about that. It's about energy, attitude, presence. Leadership is watching." What he meant was, "You didn't show up for me." I didn't argue. Not because I agreed, but because there was no room in that room for context. Not the months I spent building out the architecture for their AI-backed predictive engine. Not the nights I stayed online past midnight debugging live errors. Not the time I rewrote Declan's demo code before a board presentation so he wouldn't embarrass himself. It didn't matter. None of it mattered. I signed the papers. HR offered me 2 months severance and a vague comment about future recommendations. Then I walked back to my desk. People looked up when I entered. 1 or 2 stood halfway, unsure if they should say something. My desk plant was already drooping. I unplugged my charger, slid my laptop into my bag and took the only framed photo I had. Mom wearing a scarf on her head, smiling like she wasn't tired. "Ember," someone whispered. It was Priya, one of the juniors I'd mentored. "I'm so sorry," she said, eyes glassy. "We didn't know." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. As I stepped into the elevator, Declan walked by on his phone. He didn't look at me. Just kept talking, laughing about something that had nothing to do with systems or people or loss. That was the part that stayed. Not the firing. Not the HR tone. Not even the cold formality of the signatures. Just that moment, when I became invisible the second I stopped being useful. I didn't go home right away. I drove to the hospital. Mom was asleep. I sat next to her for hours watching the 4 drip tick down. She stirred once and whispered, "Work okay?" I didn't answer. Just held her hand. It wasn't about the job anymore. It was about everything I gave to people who never saw me. About how easily you can be erased by someone who's never written a line of code in his life. I had built the engine behind their success. I had authored the core algorithm that predicted consumer trends with over 90% accuracy. They used it in every pitch deck, every investor meeting. Declan called it his secret weapon. He just forgot who built it. But I hadn't. And neither had Jonas. They gave me 20 minutes to clear my desk. I'd seen it happen before, always to someone else. The cardboard box, the quiet walk past rows of monitors, the way everyone suddenly looked busy. I used to tell myself that wouldn't be me. Not because I thought I was untouchable, just because I thought I mattered. I was wrong. The security guard stood by the door, pretending to scroll through his phone. He didn't look up. I appreciated that. There's something cruel about forced eye contact in moments like that. Like being made to thank someone for witnessing your humiliation. I opened the bottom drawer first. That's where I kept the things that didn't belong to the company. A book Jonas gave me, half-filled notebooks, receipts I never filed. I moved slowly. Not to drag it out, but because my body didn't know what to do with the finality of it. I could feel the room watching me without watching me. The air had changed. My presence had turned radioactive. If you got too close, it might mean you agreed with me. Or worse, that you might be next. No one said anything. Not Ava, who used to message me every morning before stand-up. Not Haroon, who once stayed on a call with me until 2 a.m. fixing a silent crash on a test build. Not even Ravi, who knew better than anyone how much I'd given up for this place. I placed my charger in the box. Then the small ceramic mug I never used. Then the framed photo of my mom, smiling on a bench, her scarf tied tight like she was daring the world to say something. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was smaller, colder. Something like shame, but without guilt. The feeling of being erased while still standing in the room. When I finally turned to leave, I heard my name. Ember. It was Priya. She walked toward me like someone walking through fog, unsure if she was allowed to. Her voice was low. I'm really sorry. We didn't know. They didn't say why. I gave a small nod. It's fine. It's not, she said, barely above a whisper. You built this place. I didn't answer. What could I say? That the place I helped build never thought twice about tearing me out of it? The elevator doors opened too quickly. I stepped in. Just before they closed, I saw Declan walking across the atrium, laughing on his phone. His laugh cut through the glass like none of this had anything to do with him. The doors shut. Silence again. I didn't go straight home. I drove. No destination, just the hum of the road and the static in my chest. I ended up parked outside the hospital. I went in. My mom was sleeping. Her breathing was lighter than usual, shallow but steady. The nurse told me she'd had a rough morning. I sat beside her, hands folded, the box still in my trunk. A few minutes passed before she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. You're here early, she murmured. Yeah, I said. Work finished early. She reached out, her hand weak but warm. You okay? I lied. Yeah. Just tired. She closed her eyes again. I sat there watching her chest rise and fall, trying to remember why I ever thought any of it mattered more than this. The titles. The hours. The numbers they dangled in performance reviews like promises. They didn't know the nights I coded from the oncology waiting room. They didn't know I logged bugs while mom was vomiting blood. They didn't care. But I did. I cared too much. I thought if I gave them everything, they'd see me. That they'd protect me. But I'd built something they wanted, and they found a way to take it without me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the last 2 years. The algorithm. The late nights. The way Declan would present my work like it was his. He once said, I don't care who writes it, I just care who gets the credit. I laughed at the time. I didn't realize it was a warning. Now all I had was the knowledge that I'd built something valuable, and no seat at the table where it was being served. I opened my laptop. Not to work. Just to look. Lines of code I knew by heart. System I could rebuild from memory. An old contract I'd never deleted. Jonas's name in the footer. A clause I never paid attention to. That was the first moment I realized they hadn't taken everything. Do you like this personality? We met at a cafe on the east side, neutral ground. Quiet. No expectations. It wasn't the kind of place either of us would have picked in the old days. But that was the point. No history there. Just space. Jonas looked older, like someone who'd stopped chasing time and started letting it pass. His hair had thinned and his jacket looked more practical than sharp. But his eyes, they still had that dry focus, the kind that scanned people the way he used to scan code. We didn't hug. Just nodded. You look tired, he said. I am, I replied. He didn't ask why. Jonas never liked small talk. He waited. I let the silence stretch. They fired me, I said finally. No reason that makes sense. Just, culture fit. Jonas stirred his coffee slowly. Declan. I nodded. And the algorithm? They're still using it. Selling it. Calling it proprietary. He leaned back. Still calling it theirs, huh? I looked at him. Isn't it? That's when he smiled, not a warm smile, not even smug. Just the faint expression of a man who'd seen the end of a script while everyone else was still reading the intro. Remember what I told you in year 2? He asked. Back when we didn't have sleep or boundaries? You told me not to code for applause. He nodded. And? To protect my work like it wasn't mine yet. Exactly. Jonas pulled a folded paper from his jacket. I recognized the layout before he spoke. Legal print. A file I hadn't thought about in years. You remember the clause we wrote for your contributions? He said. The one we buried in that shell LLC before the third funding round? I frowned. I thought we dissolved that. We didn't. We just stopped talking about it. He slid the paper toward me. You signed this. I did too. It states that the algorithm, the core build version 1.0, was created under that company name. Not theirs. And technically you still own it. I stared at it. My own signature felt like a message from a version of me that was smarter than I gave her credit for. They built on it, I said quietly. They built from it. There's a difference. For a while I didn't say anything. I was thinking about the nights I worked on that version in his basement, back when we didn't have a budget or even a real server. Just coffee, whiteboards, and this impossible idea that if we made something clean enough, precise enough, it would speak for itself. I had forgotten that we filed IP back then. I was just trying to keep it from being copied. Jonas was thinking longer term. I thought we moved past this, I said. I thought it was theirs now. It's not, he said simply. They just forgot you have a memory too. I sat back. The weight of it, not just the paper but the possibility, hit slow. Like oxygen coming back after you didn't know you'd been holding your breath. They'll fight it, I said. Probably. They have lawyers. So do we. I looked at him. Why now? He shrugged. Because I saw what they did. And because you're not the kind of person who starts fights. You just finish them. I didn't feel like someone who could finish anything. I felt tired. Not just from losing the job, from losing the idea that being good was enough. I don't want revenge, I said. Good, he replied. Then this isn't revenge. It's correction. He let that word settle between us. Correction. Not ego. Not payback. Just truth set straight. Jonas reached into his bag and pulled out a USB. Old school black casing. Everything's on here. Contracts, timestamps, code history, domain logs. We backdated everything when we first built it, remember? I took it, fingers closing around it like it might vanish. It's your call, he said. No pressure. But if you want them to stop calling your work theirs, now's the time. I looked at the drive. Then back at him. You always think 5 moves ahead. Jonas smirked. That's why we worked. As we left the cafe, he paused at the door. You okay? I hesitated. Then nodded. I think I finally am. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. They'd taken my title, my desk, my access. But they hadn't taken my name. Not from the work. And now I had the proof. 3 weeks after I packed up my desk, I stopped checking my email. Not just the company one, all of them. I didn't want to read updates from a world that had already erased me. The people who used to copy me on every thread had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that felt practiced. I didn't expect to hear from anyone. But then on a Thursday morning my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Hi, it's Nadia. From Ops. Her voice was tight, like someone who wasn't sure how much to say. We're having issues. With deployment. Your algorithm's access key isn't resolving across the scaling nodes. Did you revoke something? I didn't answer right away. Not out of strategy, I just hadn't heard the word "your" in a while. No, I said eventually. I didn't revoke anything. There was a pause. Well, the system thinks you did. I said nothing. I wasn't going to help them troubleshoot a problem they didn't want to give me credit for building. We need this resolved. It's already affecting client-side performance, she added. That night I opened the old admin console. The one Jonas and I had registered before the merger. The one no one else had ever touched because no one else had known it existed. They were still using my base key to authenticate the scaling logic. Still routing traffic through the original node structure we built in the early days. I hadn't revoked anything. But the third-party license I filed under my LLC had expired. Auto-expired, actually, one of those built-in sunset clauses that kicks in after 3 years unless manually renewed. They never noticed. Now they had a system that depended on code they didn't technically own, with legal access tied to a license that no longer existed. Jonas called the next morning. They reached out to me too, he said. Tried to get around you. Thought I'd cave. Did you? I asked. He laughed. I'm old, not stupid. By Friday I had 4 missed calls from Declan. Then an email. The tone wasn't friendly. You're jeopardizing our infrastructure, it said. You're in breach. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I kept it short. Let me know if you'd like to discuss terms. He called 2 minutes later. You're holding the company hostage, he said. I didn't raise my voice. No. You're trying to run a system you don't legally have access to. There's a difference. You're making this personal. I didn't fire me, Declan. You did. There was silence on the other end. He kept going. You didn't just take my job. You took my name off the thing I built. You stripped the context out of my work. And now you want help because the foundation you ignored is breaking under pressure. He tried to push back, throw legal threats, mention the investors. I let him talk. And when he ran out of steam, I repeated what I'd already said. Let me know if you'd like to discuss terms. By Monday, I had a meeting invite. This time I brought a lawyer. They didn't expect that. They expected emotion. Retaliation. Instead, I brought documentation. Dates. Contracts. Screenshots. Jonas backed everything up with his own records. It wasn't a power play. It was clarity. Their head of legal looked through the file slowly. She didn't say much. Just flipped pages and made a few notes. Eventually, she closed the folder. You're well within your rights. Declan looked annoyed. Cornered. But he knew. I leaned forward. I'm not here to destroy your company. I just want ownership of my work recognized. I want my name back where it belongs. You can keep using the system, with a licensing agreement that reflects reality. And the fee, he asked. We'll negotiate. Fairly. He didn't like it. But he accepted it. Not because he wanted to, because he didn't have a choice. As we walked out, Jonas glanced sideways at me. You could. I nodded. Yeah. I didn't want to win. I just wanted to breathe. He smiled. That's the thing they never understand. It's not about revenge. It's about return. I kept thinking about that. How many times I'd shrunk myself in rooms like that trying to fit. How many times I'd handed over credit because I thought the work would speak for itself. Turns out sometimes the work needs a voice too. And this time it had mine. I didn't knock when I walked in. Just opened the boardroom door and stepped inside like I belonged there. Because in a way I did. Not as their employee. Not anymore. But as the person who had built the thing they now couldn't operate without. The CEO looked up and gave a polite nod. His nephew, the one who fired me, barely acknowledged me. He was scrolling through something on his phone, probably waiting for this to be over so he could move on to the next meeting. Jonas had arrived before me. He stood near the window, not saying much. Just present. Steady. Like always. They thought I was there to negotiate. I let them sit with that assumption for a few moments. We appreciate you coming in, the CEO started, smoothing his tie like the situation wasn't already out of his hands. Let's get this resolved quickly. We've looked over your licensing proposal and while the terms are... I interrupted, not loud, just direct. You won't need to review them anymore. The license was sold this morning. That got their attention. The nephew stopped scrolling. Looked up. What do you mean, sold? I transferred ownership, I said calmly. To a competitor. The agreement was finalized at 9:12 a.m. this morning. I'm no longer the licensor. Silence. The CEO blinked. You didn't mention you were negotiating with anyone else. I wasn't, I said. Until last week. The nephew leaned forward, his voice sharper now. You just gave our core infrastructure to someone else? I met his eyes. I gave it to someone who recognized what it was worth. Not just in dollars. In time. In trust. In every weekend I spent building something you used but never respected. He opened his mouth to argue, but the CEO raised a hand. And who exactly owns it now? Falcon Systems. The room changed after that. They knew what that meant. Falcon wasn't just another player. They were bigger, faster, and had been trying to break into the same space for years. Now with my algorithm they wouldn't have to build from scratch. They could scale in weeks. I tried to work with you, I said. Tried to keep things clean. But clean only works when there's mutual respect. Jonas stepped forward then, placing a copy of the signed contract on the table. This isn't a stunt, he said. It's done. The CEO picked up the folder. Flipped through it slowly, jaw tight. The nephew leaned back in his chair, staring at me like he was trying to figure out how it had all slipped past him. They thought they'd be dealing with a grudge. Someone emotional. Predictable. Instead they were looking at a finalized contract. No heat. No spectacle. Just business. I understand this feels personal, the CEO said, quieter now. It isn't, I replied. It's the opposite of personal. You made it personal when you let him, I nodded at the nephew, turn a missed party into a termination meeting. You made it personal when you erased my name from the codebase. This, I gestured to the folder, this is just clarity. No one said anything for a moment. Then the nephew finally spoke. You won't get away with this. I stood. I already did. There was no anger in my voice. No pride either. Just finality. I nodded once to Jonas, then turned toward the door. Wait, the CEO said. What do you want? I paused, hand on the handle. Thought about the question. I wanted to build something that mattered, I said. And I did. That's enough. Outside the boardroom, the hallway was empty. Jonas caught up with me a few steps later. You okay? Yeah, I said. I don't feel anything really. Just done. He nodded. That's what closure feels like. Not noise. Just the absence of needing anything else. We walked in silence after that. No debrief. No back-patting. Just two people who had done what they came to do. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't victory. It was release. I don't miss the office. Not the whiteboards filled with half-baked features. Not the forced team lunches. Not even the rush of watching something you built finally go live. What I miss is quieter. I miss the parts of myself I used to leave there at night. The effort. The thought. The small pieces of care I tucked into the code like someone might find them one day and say, I see you. But no one ever did. Not really. Now my days are slower. I make coffee without checking Slack. I read the paper while it's still warm. I take my mom for walks when she feels strong enough. We go slow and that's okay. She asks fewer questions now. Some days she forgets what year it is. But every so often she looks up at me and says, Are you still working on that thing you built? And I nod. Yeah, Mom. It's safe now. She doesn't always remember what that means, but I do. It took me longer than it should have to realize how much noise I had been living inside. Meetings, metrics, performance reviews that sounded like compliments but always ended with more. More hours. More expectations. And when I couldn't give more, they called it disengaged. But now there's stillness. Not silence. Not the kind they gave me when they shut me out of meetings. When the air in the office got colder by the day and no one looked up when I passed their desks. That silence was sharp. Punishing. This is different. This is the stillness you choose. Jonas called last week. Just to check in. We didn't talk about the contract. Or Falcon. Or anything that still carried heat. I've been thinking, he said, about what you said in the boardroom. About building something that matters. You ever figure out what that is for you now? I didn't answer right away. Because I'm not sure. But I know what it isn't. It isn't sitting in a room full of people pretending they don't see you. It isn't trying to earn back respect that should have never been taken. It isn't asking for space in a place that only wanted your output, not your presence. Later that night, I sat next to my mom on the couch. She was asleep. Head tilted gently toward her shoulder. Her hand resting on mine. And I thought maybe this is it. Maybe mattering isn't about being seen by 100 people who don't know you. Maybe it's about being known by one. Sometimes I wonder if they ever talk about me now. In those meetings. If my name ever comes up with regret or if I've just been replaced by someone newer. Someone cheaper. Someone who won't ask for too much. But the truth is I don't need to know. There's a power in walking away before they tell you to. In reclaiming the time you gave to something that never gave back. My inbox is cleaner now. My thoughts too. A former teammate messaged me the other day. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't say anything that day, he wrote. But I should have. I stared at the message for a long time. Then typed, I know. It's okay. And it was. Because I don't need apologies. Not anymore. I don't need explanations or late acknowledgments. What I needed was the time to remember who I was before I tried so hard to prove myself. And in this stillness I've started to find him again. Not the version polished for performance reviews. But the one who loved the build for what it was. The one who used to lose track of time not because of deadlines, but because he was creating something he believed in. The industry calls that naive. I call it honest. There's a project I've been sketching out. Nothing big. Nothing funded. Just an idea that feels like mine. Fully mine. And maybe that's enough. For now I water my plants. I walk with my mom. I write when it feels right. And I listen, not to feedback or status updates, but to my own thoughts finally loud enough to hear. Stillness isn't empty. It's just full of things I used to miss.